Welcome to the Tamworth FC Social in a week where the Lambs host Premier League Tottenham Hotspur. I'm Jonathan and I'm with Brett and Graham to discuss that game. Right, Graham, let's get straight into it then. It's finally nearly upon us, I should say. Thoughts as we kick off the episode?
Excited, really excited. I suppose when I saw the who would be doing the TV coverage, Ian Wright and Roy Keane. I suppose that kind of brought it home that it's happening, and the fact that we got two big boys like that doing the punditry on television is it's just another thing to add to what a day it's going to be. Just looking forward to the whole thing. I guess the build up really starts from now. I suppose they've only got one day to plan though, haven't they? Which is Thursday. I'm sure Andy Peaks and the coaching staff have probably done a little bit more homework than that. But I mean I don't know if how they're approaching the game. Probably the talking point for this podcast really, but yeah, in terms of the day, absolutely buzzing and can't wait really. I think it's going to be it's historically the biggest probably the game the club has ever staged at the ground. I would say. In terms of importance, I think we've said before it might not be as important as say winning the league or last season, but in terms of who it is and what it is in terms of it being the FA Cup, it's one hell of an occasion, and I guess it's just trying to give as good account of ourselves as possible, and for the players to go out there and enjoy it, I suppose as well, and for the fans to enjoy it and embrace it, and yeah, who knows, we can pull off some sort of shock, which would be incredible. For not only for the club but also for the town as well.
I feel, Brett, like I should say, or I want to say, like it's a reasonably good time to be playing Spurs because they're not in great form. And I would assume they'll probably rotate the squad a little bit, whether that's an advantage for Tamworth or not. I'm not sure, but what sort of chance do you give Tamworth of getting through this round?
Well, on paper, there's no chance, is there? But who cares about that? If they were to play the first team, I mean, they're not gonna. Let's be honest. But let's say if they were to play the first team, the year on paper, their form is absolutely dreadful, and this is the time to play them. But it's going to be it's going to be a mix, isn't it, of probably the first team and the second team. I think if you're Ange Postecoglou, I mean, as if we're even doing a podcast talking about how Ange Postecoglou is going to set his team up against Tamworth. He's not going to want to put even more pressure on himself, is he, by getting dumped out the cup by Tamworth? So he's going to have to take it relatively seriously. And I suppose the Spurs fans will be mindful of that as well, so they will be expecting to come to us and beat us 4 or 5 nil. And I think if they don't beat us 4 or 5 nil from a Spurs fan's point of view, they're going to be looking at that and thinking, why haven't we done that? They won't care about the plastic pitch of the terrace and the fact it's going to be absolutely bitter cold down the Lamb or anything like that. It's just going to be absolutely mad, isn't it? Just to see Big Ange in the away dugout next to Peaks.
I was going to say, I dare say the shed will have concocted some songs to welcome Ange Postecoglou and the Spurs team to the Lamb. I'm quite intrigued to see what kind of reception they get.
I would argue that Postecoglou has never seen or never experienced anything like this. He's not been in English football for very long. Obviously, I know he had those couple of years in Scotland, but there's no fans in Scottish football. They're either all there to see Southwick anyway, or there's nobody there. So he would not have experienced anything like that, where he's going to go to one of these kind of stadium grounds, right on top of him, people who are genuinely boisterous for that little team. I think he's going to be in for a huge shock.
Because Spurs are so high profile, there is virtually unlimited highlights of their matches and things like that. If Tamworth haven't been able to get to many matches, then you can pretty much watch highlights of every game they've played.
Yeah, 100%. The Tottenham players all just said then, being so close to the fans, none of those players were going to ever experience anything like that at all. Intimidating atmosphere. And when I say intimidating, I mean because you're so close to the pitch. Ange Postecoglou, I think he's got a good sense of humour. So I think he'll kind of enjoy it at first. But if things aren't quite going his way, then I think it could be really interesting how he reacts and then also how his team reacts as well. Especially if you've probably got, if he's putting out a bit of a mixture of youth and first team players as well. It's going to be a real David and Goliath battle. So that's just a whole part of it, really. But yeah, I guess for Tamworth, yeah, there's plenty of coverage everywhere on YouTube, online, and whatnot. You watch the games on television. So, I mean, I don't know how much you can really read into that. It really, I guess, depends, like we say, on the team selection. And I suppose I'm really intrigued to see how many first teamers they do bring and how serious they do take it. Because for me, that from a Tottenham point of view, they want to win a trophy, and this is a realistic chance for them to win a trophy and get into Europe. And I think they should take it seriously based on that. Forget who they're playing. So they need to give Tamworth some respect from that point of view. But yeah, it's just crazy to think that we're gonna have Spurs playing on the Lamb ground. And like, yeah, it's just gonna be really surreal, isn't it?
Imagine if you're the Tamworth FC scout rocking up at White Hart Lane. No, I'm the Tamworth FC scout. I've come to. I'm here to watch the game today. Well, it's just insane. 3 years ago, he was going to hitching away on a Tuesday night.
Good milestone, isn't it? We've said it umpteen times before, but I feel like this is a just reward for the work that has been done by the club, because it has been a meteoric rise, and you think it's nice to have a sort of a glamour tie, because I think that is what this is, and it's without the pressure of having to win, though, to sort of seal a league title, in the same way that probably comparable big games have had in the last few seasons in the National League North and the Southern.
Yeah, we can just enjoy it and lap it up.
Looking at Spurs stats for the Premier League, it's this is where we get brought down to earth a little bit, I think. So they are, by my maths, the second highest scoring team in the Premier League so far. But on the flip side, they do concede goals as well. So they've scored 42 and conceded 30. And it's that kind of like characterization they get given sometimes, in it, like they are very attacking, but then the cost is at the other end they can be quite vulnerable. And I don't know. I also feel like of all the big six in inverted commas teams, Spurs are probably the one who I would fancy playing the most. Particularly, like, I suppose it will be things like the long throw, won't it? If Tonk starts and get a few long throws, that's the kind of thing where you think just rattle them early doors, like get a few good balls in the box and just see what happens. But I think as well, Brett, that probably will be quite key how the Tamworth start the game, won't it? Like if you can set the tone of it being quite a nervy atmosphere for Spurs, then you sort of go from there.
Well, I went on the Anfield Wrap podcast earlier on, and they were asking me about how Tamworth were realistically going to be looking to play. And I said to them then that Tamworth are a team that are really, really happy just to let the opposition have the ball. And obviously, the reality is we ain't going to get the ball off Spurs unless they are forcing errors. But that is fine because we are happy to play like that, and that is how we've played for the last 2 seasons. So I think Spurs might be in for a shock because I think when you usually watch these big cup ties where you get like the little non-league side playing the big Premier League team, they're set up just to kind of be there, and then that's kind of enough. And then they get pulled apart a little bit, and they get whittled down, and then they run out of energy, obviously. And then it obviously probably within the first 25 minutes, goals start going in, and then once you get to the 70th minute, then they start flying in left, right, and centre, obviously because there's such a chasm. Um, Whereas I generally think if we were to go into that at 0-0, you could be looking at the hour mark, still 0-0. Tottenham could be scratching their heads thinking, what can we do on this surface to break this team down? There are loads of things that are going to have to come into play on the day. How is Jazz Singh going to handle the pressure? Because he's going to have a huge part to play on Sunday. Uh, and then what do we actually try and do going forward? Do we try and go down the wings where we're not that sharp? Do we go direct, which is predictable for Shakuna, who's obviously only just coming back into in the trophy game against Sutton? And that's just from the Tamworth point of view. Obviously, Spurs alone, they've got to turn up and in some capacity perform. I think the fact that he's going to be absolutely Baltic will really work in our favour.
Something else I've just thought of as well, because Spurs, their first choice goalkeeper's injured, isn't he? So there was a chap called Austin, I believe, started for them the other day. But then I also saw they've since signed another goalkeeper. And you just think, I don't know, goalkeepers like you talked about with Jazz Singh, Brett, I think the goalkeepers will be very keen, especially if Tamworth can get some long throws in. Maybe if Spurs have got a keeper who's not played a ton of games for them, that's I don't know. There's all manner, aren't there, of aspects that Tamworth can try and capitalise on in this game. But then I suppose, on the flip side, Tamworth, Graham need to be firing on all cylinders. Like everything needs to go right.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting as well what Brett was just saying there about how not having the ball it works in our favour because it's how we play because we have to play like that. And there was many times I was watching the Huddersfield game where it just felt like it turned into a National League game, and we brought them down. Well, to our level, how we want to play, and we were dictating the game without them realizing it almost. And that happens a lot when we're at home. Teams have the ball, but we edge our way into the game, and then we're slowly actually dictating without the opposition almost realizing it. So I think the longer that we can go in that game, you just never know then, because it's just kind of like, well, try and break us down. But we know that we do this week in, week out, and we can turn it into the kind of game we want. So I think that's our biggest threat, personally. And we've done that. We are talking about Spurs now. We're not even just talking about Huddersfield, but it's still that same principle. And that's what we're good at. So we should stick to that. I don't know how we're going to score, but so sometimes I think how we're going to score in the National League. So yeah, that's the tricky part, but sticking to the principles.
Right, it is the moment of truth then, and time for our predictions. And a reminder, in our mini league, it's 1 point for a correct result and 3 points for a correct scoreline. Just to catch us up on the last few results, none of us predicted Tamworth's win at Sutton. None of us predicted the draw at home to Forest Green, and none of us predicted the defeat at Solihull. So that's very efficient, and means we are as we were. I'm on 27 points. Graham's on 14. Brett is on 10. We will review our Sutton FA Trophy predictions in the next episode. Brett, would you like to give your Spurs prediction first?
I haven't actually thought about what I think the scoreline's going to be. I'm going to go 4-1 to Spurs.
Care to explain your workings?
I've changed my mind actually. I actually think I'm actually going to go for 0-0, and then I think we'll lose on penalties. So nil. I'm going to go for 0-0. And the workings for that is I just think that they will struggle to break us down. And I think that with the pitch and the weather and the conditions, I just think that it's going to be tough for them.
Certainly be fulfilling the drama aspect of the FA Cup, wouldn't it, if it goes 0-0 into pens. Graham, how about you?
I'm going to probably go Tamworth 0, Tottenham 2. I think they will find it hard to break us down, but they are good. They score a lot of goals, and I think they'll find a way eventually. I think we'll get to half time. We can get to half time 0-0. I believe that. But yeah, I'm going to go with a Spursy win. But I think we'll make it very, very difficult for them. And I hope Brett's right, to be honest. So, but yeah, I'm gonna go 2-0 to Spurs.
I'm going to go for a 4-1 defeat. Similar reasoning, I think. I think Spurs' attacking traits are very fearsome, and I think they will score goals. But I do fancy Tamworth to maybe nick a goal from a set piece or a long throw. But I think then also no shame in losing 4-1 to a team who's playing in Europe and has been in the Premier League for donkey's years. Right, we'll leave it there for this episode of the Tamworth FC Social. Thank you for listening. You can follow us on social media at TFC Social Pod. If you enjoy the podcast, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel.